welcome to this review of Sacred Power Robo. So I just got this in the mail real recently, and it was shipped to me lightning fast through 52 Toys AliExpress store. I want to say it was a little over a week, maybe a week and a half, from Beijing, China to my doorstep. Thank you, 52 Toys AliExpress store. In case you don't know, Sacred Power Robo is a very fast release and follow-up to this guy, Sacred Power Robo, which is a 4-up style figure design based on kind of an old school Robo gattai genre. So Sacred Power here, I kind of viewed as sort of a tribute to Voltron or Go Lion, as I think he's more popularly known in the East. So yeah, this very much seems like a tribute to Voltron to me. And I would have thought, you know, at least my initial reaction to this was this is more of a tribute to Vehicle Voltron, which is the 15 little vehicles, land, sea, and air, or whatever. They combine to form like a supersized vehicle or whatever, and then they can form the Voltron robot. But having played around with this and looked at the vehicle modes, we'll take a look at that as this review progresses. But my opinion has changed just a little bit. So aesthetically, I kind of feel like this is more of a tribute to GoBots, at least on look and feel from what I recall of those vehicles. Had a lot of GoBots back in the day. That was actually what I was into before I discovered Transformers. And I know a thing or two about GoBots and their look and feel, and you'll see what I mean when we get into the vehicle modes. So we'll clear these guys out of the way for just a second here so we can focus on the package. And let me tell you, this is another huge damn box. And just to give you a better idea how big it is, I don't have enough room for it in my recording booth. That is the cover sleeve. Got some nice artwork there. Then you got the interior package, of course. And it came with minifigures. This is a bonus item that I had bought along with this figure, and they came packed in the cover sleeve. We'll also take a look at those little guys in just a second here too. So there again, huge packaging, and you got a little window for all the figures here. Give you a quick once around the box here. 52 Toys does occasionally have a little bit of a confusing naming scheme for some of their figures. For whatever reason, they named this figure Peace Mecha. All the vehicles have a peace themed name, so you've got Peace Fighter, you've got Peace Gunboat, you've got Peace Tank, and then Peace Train, Peace Everything. So so the lore they built around this figure is that supposedly he's so powerful that he just shows up and then people stop fighting, I guess. Even though his name is Sacred Power Robo. And I suspect that they kind of partly split the difference there, I guess, with the naming scheme, because 52 Toys knows they're playing to an international audience, and they're kind of playing a little cautious. They don't want to come off as too violent with their figure designs or anything like that, I assume. But, you know, you could also say that the color scheme on this figure, you know, black and white with that sort of blue there, is really kind of a cop color scheme. To a large degree, I think. So I feel like it's not completely unjustified or anything like that. Moving away from the box, but one thing I'll point out real quick here is that unfortunately this one did come kind of crumpled. It shipped extremely fast. I wasn't super happy to find this box kind of beat up or whatever, but I would attribute that partly to not having adequate packaging with this being shipped overseas through air freight or whatever. And also that the box is so damn big that it really kind of does require extra padding just to keep it from crumpling. So a little unfortunate there. Not a deal breaker or anything like that. It's just beat up. Also, I'm not going to go into great detail, but that packaging is kind of a tribute to retro style Robo gattai or, you know, Japanese fighting robot toy package designs. If you want a little more detail on that, not a whole lot more to say about it, but I do talk about that a little bit more in my Sacred Power Robo review, which of course I'll link to in the description. Moving on here, we got some other things that came with the package. You got instructions there, you got a bunch of catalogs and, you know, promo things and whatever. We also have some character cards. Just real quick, I want to touch on that. I want to see if anything's new in this catalog here. And the main thing I'm interested in is the Beast Box catalog. It does have a couple others in there also. So yeah, some interesting stuff in here. They want to show off some other combiner sets that they've done, I guess. Yeah, you got some 7cm figures. A little bit of this and that. Yeah, pretty good spread. And also some oddball stuff here. AMTS, and I forget what you call this one. And of course their Infinitybox lines. And there's a boy, Unis. Look at that. Unis is all alone.
By my command, ReleaseOmex, release in a beatbagger. I command you, or suffer the fate of 1,000 other worlds.
All right, settle down, Unis. So yeah, like I was saying, Unis is basically alone in the line. He has not had a repaint or a retool or anything like that. There is another figure called Omex, which is supposed to be his counterpart, and that one was actually released as a 3.75-inch figure, but they never put out a Mega Box or Infinitybox version of that character, which kind of sucks to me, but there are more than myself who would love to see a second version of Unis, I'll just put it that way. So his anger is not entirely unjustified. So moving on, we'll take a quick look at these eraser figures here. Yeah, they're pretty neat looking. I mean, they're cleverly detailed. I really love the style of them and everything. If you have shelf space and like putting this kind of thing on display, might be a worthwhile thing for you to pick up. I would say as far as bonus items go, I would have preferred to have something else. So I'll talk about that in a little more detail when I do a box grade at the end of this review. It's pretty cool styling, and don't have their names handy here, but basically all of these figures do actually have a name, and they're named after the band Queen. That's 5-2 Toys for you. Their designers love music, especially rock music, and they will find any reason whatsoever to do a tribute name to a rock band or a musician or whatever. So yeah, this one, he's got the nautical seal on his shoulder there, so obviously he's the peace boat, or peace gunboat guy, rather. This is the tank guy. That's a tank tread right across his chest. Very cool styling. And that's Mr. Peace Train right here. They're pretty cool. We're going to take a look at some character cards here. Cool, so this is Kraken, I think. This would be Joliet. And hey, what do you know? We got the Meerkats here. Just featured them on a YouTube short here recently, so. And I forget the designation on these, but this is, I think, a rare card. I think that's what the R is for. And this is either Ricochet or Real Steel. It's kind of hard to tell from the monochrome version. And another rare one. Completely forgot the name of this particular creature here. This could either be the original release Velociraptor or the one that came with the Air Force set. So pretty cool. Love the styling on those cards. So coming back around, let's talk a little bit about the figure details here. So obviously this has already been combined from its vehicle mode. And yeah, you've got a little bit of articulation here, some basic stuff because of the way the arms, so the shoulders can lift a little bit. Don't have any elbow rotation, but you do have elbow pivoting up and down. It can get up to about 90 degrees, so you can get that gun up there. Pretty full articulation in the legs. You got some knee bends and stuff like that. Can tilt the ankle down a little bit. Can turn at the hips. You can get them split out like that, so can turn at the waist because you got that open connection port there. Does not have any head movement. That's just by nature of its transformation, which we'll look at in a little bit here. And yeah, just overall beautiful styling on it, I think. One thing I really dig about both of these figures, Firepower Robo and Sacred Power Robo, is that their back cleans up really nicely. You hear a lot of complaints with Transformer figures about what's the back kibble look like. Usually that is kind of a situation. Front to back, they did a beautiful job of keeping this figure really kind of clean looking, and just the overall look and feel is pretty darn good in my opinion. One thing that does kind of annoy me a little bit is just get these gigantic cufflinks, I guess is what you might want to call them, and that's basically the part of the gunboat that's covering up the fist so it can transform and actually have a fist. Be that as it may. I'll also say it does have some wrist rotation here. You know, there's not much to these particular wrists. It's basically a 5mm port that's been molded to look a little bit like an actual fist. There again, you got the gun made out of 2 parts, of course, and we'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at how these come together in just a little bit here. I do like the head sculpt. Got some funky lips, I guess, and some big old shades. Pretty common for a Robo gattai type figure. And what I guess I would call a party hat, although I would say that's probably more like a cop hat, a police hat, or a helmet or something like that. Yeah, some interesting styling on the chest plate and everything, so beautifully done all the way around. I love the overall kind of black with white and gray tones and cobalt blue and gold accents, so pretty nice look all the way around. Good looking figure. And we'll touch on its interchangeability just a little bit here. There again, 5mm port. If you really want to, you can have Firepower Robo club you to death with his own arm. Comes right off, plugs right in. Pretty easy. So there again, like I was saying, you can interchange these parts if you want to. So got some interesting plug and play options for sure. So one thing I want to point out here, this part broke on me the very first time I tried to transform this figure. I don't know if you can see that little stress mark on there or not. That part damn near broke clean off, and that was basically me just transforming it from its vehicle mode to its stack cube mode. Basically, I managed to super glue it, and I think I got it level. Probably hard to tell from the job that I did on it. See a little bit of overflow material there, I guess, or whatever. But one way or the other, I have not tested that tab to see if it's going to work again or not. There's no other way to transform this figure, at least into its cube mode, without using that tab. So if it breaks, that's what you're going to see in this review. We're going to take a look at that in just a little bit here. But anyways, as far as that goes, I think I've said all I wanted to say about the robot mode, so we'll go ahead and jump into transforming into vehicle mode. Before I do though, one thing I'll point out real quick is this figure is rated 2.5 stars. That's something new 5-2 Toys has been doing with their Beast Box series, is they've been rating 0 to 5, and the lower the rating, the easier it is supposed to be able to transform. So 2.5 stars, that indicates a pretty low complexity as far as transformation, and I found that to be true with Sacred Power Robo, so we'll jump into that, and I'll show you just how darn easy it is to transform this thing. First and most obvious thing is you probably want to take everything apart. The arms that are going to come off there, got the torso that'll come off there, and the head and shoulders will come off the torso. So we'll start with the jet piece fighter. Basically just going to tilt the cockpit up, and it's on a slider mechanism, so if it's catching a little bit or whatever, you just need to make sure it's rotated down. Then you can snap it into place there. What are part of the shoulder joints there, forward like that. Then you're going to rotate the wings up and over like so, and you want to snap these joints into place. Also, the way this works is the back of the robot is that it has this slider mechanism here on the midsection, so you just want to make sure that's straightened up, of course. Jets, you're going to want to make sure that those are pushed up in the up position. That's also on a slider. Then you're basically just folding the wings around and over, and you'll connect them to that tab. Same on the other side. Pretty simple. And you got yourself a neat little jet fighter. It does have 3mm port on the bottom, so you can display this thing on a stand if you need to. You're probably better doing it that way anyway. So it'll just connect like that. So moving on, we'll get the tank transformed here. So we're going to start with the face. Fold that over and around like that, tuck it inside that cavity there. Then this piece will fold down. So we'll also need to push this piece down on that slider here. Keep that piece tucked down there. Tank treads, we'll pull those out like so. They'll come over and around. So we'll just get them into position basically. The way it works is there's a peg that's supposed to line up inside the front tank tread there. If you've got the slit into position correctly, they should slide into that joint cleanly. And just in case you don't, you may need to push on a little bit just to get it lined up and level. So basically that. Then you've got what counts as the tank turret, I guess. It's supposed to be a futuristic tank. Let's fold that piece over and around. And you got yourself a little tank. You can fold this piece out if you want to. So we'll move on to piece gunboat, which is arguably the most complex part of this transformation here. So we'll start by rotating the wrist. At the sort of top wrist edge here is going to be facing in that direction, like so. Rotate this 5mm port up like that. Straighten up the elbow there, and we'll rotate this piece at about a 90-degree angle, something like that. Get that piece straightened out there. Then we're going to grab a hold of this piece. Kind of got to get your fingernail in there to dig that out, like that. Then that's going to rotate around 180 degrees, and it'll collapse back into that space like that. Now you see this piece is on a mushroom peg, and it's going to rotate 180 degrees. Then you're going to pull this top piece out, so you can get the fan out of there. Pull that out like so, and you're going to rotate it in about that position. And then you'll rotate it around 180 degrees like so. And we're going to rotate this piece up and over, like that, snap it into place. The fan will fold down into that cavity there, like that. Then we're going to use this giant cufflink to cover up the fist. That'll snap into place like so. So you got half the gunboat. We'll repeat this process for the other side. So there again, rotate the wrists, straighten this piece out. Get that at about a 90-degree angle. We'll have that piece forward like so. Bring out the little cockpit and rotate it back into place. Rotate this piece around 180 degrees. Then we'll rotate that piece up and out. Bring it down like that so it's facing in the right direction. Rotate it around 180 degrees. Then rotate that piece up and connect them like so. Rotate the cuff link. Snaps into place. And we can push in that 5mm port. Push this piece back down so it connects into that cavity there. And there's a whole series of tabs and connections here and whatever, so interlocking, and it'll basically just sandwich together. So you just push that together and you got your little gunboat. Pretty cool. Train is probably the easiest transformation out of all of these. You're basically just going to rotate that piece up and over like so. Just make sure the heel spur's tucked into that cavity there. And we're going to rotate those pieces around. We're going to rotate those pieces around, just make sure. So those are sort of like the wheels of the train. Want to make sure that's lined up like so. Rotate that into place. Then you can flip up the little guns if you want to. And for part of that, we're going to take apart Sacred Power Robo's cannon here. So it's in 2 pieces here. Cool thing though is that it's on a 5mm port, and right in the middle of the train is where the big gun goes. And on the back side of the train, and one step I almost forgot to do here is to rotate that piece up. So that brought out the heel spur, so we're just going to rotate that up and around, get it locked into place there. So sort of a train with a little tail on it, or whatever you want to call that. So that piece will just attach like that. And there you go. All right, so let's take a look at these vehicles. So first up here, we got the Peace Train. Beautiful styling on it. I really like what they did with the guns on this thing. It's a really clever detail. It's got some nice playability on it. You know, you can turn the main gun around like that. Big Bertha. You've got the ground-to-air cannons here, and then this one here that can tilt a little bit to the left and right. And overall, it has some beautiful styling with the kind of black and white motif and these covered train wheels, which is kind of a nice detail. Looks good overall. The only thing I'd say about that, as far as that goes, just kind of given the way the wheels are painted like this, at a distance it kind of looks like a wallpaper pattern a little bit to me. So, you know, what are they going to do? There's only so much they could do with this shape and size of vehicle to really get that point across, but doesn't totally sell the point that this is a train, in my opinion. It does look good though, I think. They probably would have been just as well to paint them completely round like they did on the centerpiece here. One thing that I would point out about this one, and you know, given that these are little blocky toys, it's not like you can expect a whole lot of articulation out of them, but this is an elongated train that actually forms legs. Trains in general don't move down a track like this, you know. They need to be able to turn and kind of bend around a curve and that kind of thing, and this cannot do that. But you can get a little bit creative with it, and if you want to turn some of the joints around and that kind of thing, you can get it to curve. So you can kind of fake it a little bit, but you're having to move pieces just to get there. So cool looking little vehicle though. So basically, this is a follow-up to Sacred Power Robo, which I thought was kind of a nod to 80's era, the Lion's Voltron. Being that these are vehicles, I guess I kind of took it that these vehicles were really going to be kind of a nod to Vehicle Voltron. But just looking at the overall styling and kind of the blockiness and detail and all that kind of stuff, I kind of feel like these are quite a bit more like GoBots. So just a quick sidebar. Going back to when I was a kid, a little fact about me is that I did not get into Transformers right away. My first foray into transforming robots was absolutely GoBots before I discovered Transformers, and I had to have been a few dozen of those things. I'm pretty familiar with the shape and style of GoBots from back in the day, and I'm going to throw a few up on screen here just so you can compare those old GoBot vehicle designs to what we have here. But overall, yeah, I really dig the styling on these vehicles. This gunboat is super cool. You know, obviously it's totally symmetrical. Got some little weapons here, more or less a hovercraft. You got the hovercraft fans at the top here, the little cockpits and the ramp, and yeah, beautifully done. There again, this is the tab that broke on me. So when we're done looking at vehicle details, I'm going to go ahead and transform this into its cube mode. We're going to see how this thing holds up. Kind of have my doubts that this is going to hold together. I think it's going to break. We're going to find out in real time on screen in this video, so hang on for that. Yeah, beautiful little gunboat. This is just such a cool little piece. I mean, this really brings out the kid in me. Then we have Peace Tank, which unfortunately does not have a rotating turret, so it's got the same problem as Sacred Power Robo's had, I guess. But so it's a really cool looking, stylized, kind of a retro futuristic tank. There again, what's on screen there. Obviously missing some mobility. Yeah, cool detail here is that this little piece can fold down. I guess you can also have it folded up or whatever, but I don't know. I guess if you're a kid or whatever, you can kind of pretend that's like a little laser gun sticking out the front there. Then you have the gun, quote unquote, turret, but there again, it doesn't rotate. So one other interesting thing about this particular tank is if you want to separate out the treads from those pegs there, you do have a little bit of flexibility with how you can position the tank treads. So you could get it into a sort of a walker position if you wanted to, and it'll sit flush on its tank treads there. So that's kind of a cool little detail. And there again, of course, you can have them folded straight down. So it's riding flat on its tank treads. But of course, you want to have those pegs lined up so that it's resting inside the peg, flush up with the rest of the vehicle. Yeah, pretty cool little piece. And last, but clearly not the least, is Peace Fighter which very much looks like a stealth bomber. Very cool vehicle design. I mean, I love the whole Batwing wedge shape there. Again, retro styling, you know, back in the 70s, they just could not imagine panoramic curved glass. I mean, no. You know, it's all panoramic windows are going to be with window panes. I like the nice little gold stripes there. You got the jet engines in the back here. Yeah, it's just beautifully detailed. Great looking little piece. But there again, it is what it is. It's basically a blocky wedge shape. There are no landing gear. There's nothing here that you can really do with it. I mean, I guess if you really wanted to play around with it a little bit, with the wing shapes and that kind of thing, you could do a little bit of something like that, or, you know, have them folded slightly up or whatever if you want to. But other than that, yeah, there's not a whole lot that you can do with this particular thing. But it is a very nicely stylized, cool looking little jet. If I were a kid, I would have no problem playing with this thing for hours. But we're going to do a loop-de-loop and come back around and get this thing transformed into its cube mode. So first thing we're going to do is pull the wings out like so. That'll give us room to rotate the jet engines around. They're going to have to come up and around like that. Kind of come together in the middle at about a 45-degree angle, about like that. So it's on a slider here. You just want to make sure it's flush with the bottom side there. So we're going to attach the wings there. Then we're going to take them up, flip them around. And there's a tab and post connection there. It connects in a pretty natural form there. Snap them together like that. Just make sure that these pieces are snapped together. Got yourself a little card shape there, so that's one. And on with the tank. Basically, yeah, we're going to flip the tank treads around like that and then bring these pieces up and over like so. They're going to connect naturally into that peg and post connection there, so they'll go together like that. You're going to take the front ones, bring them around like that, and you're basically forming a diamond shape there. Then you're going to take the back side, flip that over and around like so. Then you're going to take the turret and fold that in and then roll that in like so. So if this post is sticking out, you're just going to want to make sure you have that rotated down into the cavity there. And you're going to rotate that piece down into place. And there is a little bit of a snap here. So this piece is actually on a slider. So you're going to want to make sure it's in the uppermost position. So you'll just want to push on that. And when you hear it click into place, then you'll know it's kind of locked into place essentially. Now for the gunboat, we're going to split this in half, just pull that apart. And you probably don't want to crank on it too hard because it is a series of tabs connecting in the center there. So you just want to make sure you kind of apply pressure evenly so that you're pulling it out and not cranking on it, twisting it basically. So we got those separated. So we'll start with this side. Just want to get the hovercraft, the fan out there, pull that little gun piece up and out like that. Rotate this piece 90 degrees so it's facing towards you. Then you're going to take this piece, the little cockpit piece, fold it up and around, and then rotate it down into that space. Once you have that, you're going to twist the fan around and then rotate that down into that space so it fits inside that cavity there. Then we're going to separate what constitutes the elbow joint. You're going to rotate this piece down 90 degrees. Then you're going to rotate from this mushroom peg around 180 degrees, like so. Then this whole piece will rotate on that hinge down and around, like so. And there is a tab and post connection there, so that'll connect into that slot. And we're going to repeat that whole process for the other side. I'm going to bring that fan up and over, rotate it around 90 degrees like so, bring this gun up like that, then we're going to take the cockpit, bring that up, rotate it over and around into that cavity like so, rotate the fan piece around 180 degrees, tuck it inside that cavity, then we're going to separate the elbow piece out like so, rotate this piece down 90 degrees, then from here rotate that around 180 degrees, then we're going to rotate this whole piece down 90 degrees till it connects to that, and it's going to connect to that little tab there. Then these pieces are going to sandwich together. So the way the instructions show it, at least when I transform this, these gun turrets seem to naturally want to go down into that cavity in a straight position, but at least the instructions say you should have it at about a 45-degree angle or something like that. So I'm just going to go by what's shown in the instructions so I don't look like I'm straying too far from what's the, I guess, the recommended transformation, if you want to call it that. I guess the most important thing to note here is that this peg and post connection is opposite of that other side, and then you have these tabs here, a tab and slot there, so they should connect directly on top of each other. I'm not going to be able to get a good enough angle to show you how that connects together, but basically, yeah, they do snap together. And ultimately, I don't think it really matters what position those guns are in, but they seem to come together kind of nicely at that 45-degree angles. All right, so far so good. Now, there is no storage for this gun, so unfortunately you got to remove that piece and that piece. So get those out of the way here. Transformation on this guy is pretty simple. The gist of it is you're going to have to collapse those heel spurs up inside the cockpit of the train and also the boot or the rear of the train, gun turret, whatever you want to call it. And then you're going to fold both pieces inside the cavity on the underside there. So that's going to come around like that. Same on the back side, about like that. Then these pieces are going to fold down and around like so, like that. And you're going to want to keep these pieces straight, these bars straight up, and you're going to fold from this joint down and around like so on that side too. And that looks a little sloppy in my opinion. That is interesting. So it's forming a square shape. For whatever reason, I'm sensing that these are just a little off kilter. I mean, everything's going to come together because this is tab and post connection. This piece is only held together by friction, but once you get everything connected to those tabs, and it just connects to the rest of the set. So I guess that's about right. Anyways, now we need to start connecting pieces to form the cube mode. So we're going to start with the train as the base. And you're essentially just looking for where parts need to connect on this thing, where it makes sense logically. So second piece is going to be the gunboat, and tabs don't line up on this side. They line up here correctly because you got two tabs in this piece here and two slots plus this one in the middle here. So that's kind of the given. So we'll just connect that like that. Those pieces sandwiched together. Pretty nice. Next up is the tank, and there again, you're just looking for where the holes go. So the obvious one is this pagan post connection right here. And then on the tank treads, there are these little cavities here. That's where these tabs are going to connect. This is going to be a moment of truth. Basically, I'm going to connect these together. When I pull them apart, we're going to find out if that tab held. So I'm going to do this as gingerly as possible. Final piece. And I think that's the way it wants to go. Yeah, it's just going to connect on those posts right there. We're just going to sandwich it together. And there's your box mode. For what it is, it's a pretty neat looking stack of objects. Very novel design for sure. I think it comes together pretty well. Fits right in there. Pretty nice. Now I'm going to pull these apart and see what we got here. See if those tabs held together. So there's that piece. This is where we find out if that tab's going to break or not. So I'm going to pull it apart kind of gingerly, starting from that center post here. Bring that up. Bring that up. Looks like it held together. Kind of lucked out on that deal. And I expect that the rest of it will hold together pretty well too. So I'm going to go ahead and put these back together. Again, very gingerly because this broke on me. Fits right inside of its cube again, and we're good to go. Now it's time to give this peace-loving, party hat-wearing parts former a box grade. This is my rating system of 6 categories with 5 points each for a total of up to 30 points. So Firepower Robo is right on theme with Robo Gattai and captures that very specific look of characters from that 70s and 80s era genre. I really like all the vehicles. I would even argue that they have as much character and style as the Combiner robot itself. 5 out of 5. As with Sacred Power Robo, it's formed out of these neat little individual vehicles with a few different transformation modes, and since they're both basically identical forms with slight retooling and figure designs, their parts are also interchangeable. If you enjoy fiddling with basic little objects, there's a lot you can do with this thing. I do like the little eraser figures, but what I don't like as much is having a bunch of little random extra objects that don't really have any interactivity value, and it's just more stuff I either have to find somewhere to display or put in a drawer. What would have made more sense to me is if the bonus item were extra weapons. After all, you have one unused 5mm port hand, and the figure's name is Firepower Robo. 4 out of 5. Straightforward transformation, it's fun to do, and it's pretty easy. I like the stacked objects cube mode as a concept, but what I came to find with this figure is that it's completely dependent on these connection ports. If they break, there goes your box mode. 3 out of 5. As with Sacred Power Robo, articulation would best be described as kind of awkward. It's just the shape of the arms, which I did find to be slightly easier to manipulate than Sacred Power Robo, and the way they hit up against the chest and shoulder parts. Plus, its head can't turn, and while I get that the vehicles aren't much more than basic blocks by design, I feel like the train should have at least had some articulation built into it so it could naturally curve. 2 out of 5. For construction, I considered giving Firepower Robo a 1. I mean, if 5T Toys is doing quality assurance testing at all, and they probably are, I feel like this was rushed to market. Out of 100 some odd Beast boxes that I bought over the past few years, this is the first one I've had a part break on me the first time I transformed it. However, as you saw in my review, that tab did hold up with superglue, so I'm going to award this 2 out of 5. I love the neat little vehicles, which very much remind me of GoBots back in the day, and just its overall quirky retro looks. It's a great figure, but its limited articulation, weaponry that doesn't quite line up with its namesake, and the fact that a part broke on me right out of the gate is a bit of a buzzkill. 4 out of 5, and that brings the box grade total to 20 out of 30. So that's a look at 52 Toys' newest combiner, Firepower Robo. I really like its retro styling, and those vehicle designs are really cool. There are some aspects about this set that I wish 52 Toys had done differently. Most obvious is those easily broken tabs that form the box mode, but to be fair, they did actually hold together when I separated out its cube mode, so that's not a total loss. One way or the other, it's a fun little throwback, and in spite of some inherent flaws, I think I like this one better than Sacred Power Robo. It's the vehicles, man, they're just awesome, and that's what's going on display. If you enjoyed this review, please leave a like, a comment, or share it with a friend. I've got much more in the works to review with this channel, so there's more on the way. Thanks, have a great week, and I'll catch you in the next one.